Okay, 6 o'clock. Okay, before we get start tonight's meeting, can't emphasize it enough. Everyone speaks slowly and into the mic. And when you are finished speaking, please mute your microphone to prevent the feedback. Okay, today's February 1st. This is the Barberton City Council. We will go right into our committee meetings. First committee up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting. It is February 1st, 2021. It is 6:01 p.m. and we are virtual on GoToMeeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as council members and guests noted by the clerk. Topics of discussion. There is no request for legislation. Miscellaneous discussion. I just want to give a big shout out to the street crew for handling the recent winter mix that we had. So had a lot of positive feedback about that, way more positive than any negative. And so I reached out to Mr. Tracy and let Mr. Tracy know that I was receiving a lot of good feedback and passed the word to the crew. While I was at, I asked him about some statistics of the street department, how many lane miles we have and how much we treat, to how many trucks we have. And Mr. Tracy said that we have approximately 250 lane miles throughout the city of Barberton, and in an optimal condition, we have 10 trucks operating. So if you break that down, when and I say optimal meaning we have 10 trucks and nothing goes wrong. That's 25 miles that each truck has to service every time it snows, goes away, and they need to rerun and service that stretch. And again, that's optimal. So each truck is probably servicing more than that, but hands down they did a good, as many have mentioned earlier. And I don't have anything. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from committee members? Mrs. Angela?
Mr. Tracy, I just want to thank you and the street crew and for the salt and the plowing. My husband was out about 5:45 going to work today and wasn't that bad. So we appreciate all they do for the city.
Anybody else from committee?
I'll just piggyback on to Neat, and they all do a great job.
Mr. Tracy, do you have an update? Anything going around on the street, sidewalk, or lighting?
No, I just want to thank you guys for the comments. That's appreciated. I know it goes a long way with the employees and staff. So they really are the backbone of the department. Our employees are what make that department go around. So they do a fantastic job. They're extremely dedicated. We have a good system down between our dispatch center and the street employees and the management and all the drivers. So we have a pretty well-oiled machine down there. There's hiccups as always with equipment breakdowns, or sometimes when these events start to become days worth of events instead of a day, it starts to wear on people. But we have other ways to approach it, and they've learned through the years to how to navigate anything that's thrown at them. So we really do appreciate your comments.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there any miscellaneous discussion from council members? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff. Kara, I think you're on.
And I will second that motion.
And a second by Mrs. Fry, and Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting is now adjourned at 6:05 p.m.
Thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Javers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting on February 1st, 2021 at 6:06. They're meeting virtual. All members are present. and other councils also noted from Mrs. Price and guests. Today we have no request for legislation, and I am opening this up for a miscellaneous discussion. If I can start off with Mayor Judge, if you mind, please talk about the Health Commission meeting the other day, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we had a health board meeting last week, first one of the year here in January, last January. Reviewed different stats with COVID and different events going on, whether they were infrastructure projects or other programs or projects that we've done in 2020 and looking into 2021. So continuing with gathering stats and data on COVID. It seems to be always changing. I'll have more updates on COVID at the end of the meeting. That's about it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. And opening this up for any miscellaneous discussion from council members or others.
Mrs. Coburn has her hand up.
Oh, I can't see your name. Ms. Coburn, go ahead.
I wondered if we had any updates on the overdoses in our area. Have we gotten any information on how many?
The mayor has sent some information. Mr. Mayor Judge, can you answer that for us?
I received an email from Summit County Health every day, and I send that out to the health board every day. So I didn't look at the report today, but they send that out. Opiate deaths is still a concern, despite a lot of attention going towards COVID. And these are numbers that are only reported at the hospital. So if someone ODs and doesn't go to the hospital, they may not get tracked. So, you know, we, the county, the state, the city, we all make data-driven decisions. So it's very important that we have the best stats. But yes, I receive a report daily, and I send that out to the health board.
So does the health committee also get that report? The council committee?
No, that hasn't been requested. I can definitely add you to the list.
I remember when I was chair, we used to get that report. So I think we should have the health committee still get that report.
Okay.
So they can report to the council.
I'll send, Councilman Jaber's on the email, but I will send it to all health committee members.
Mrs. Fry, your hand's up. I can see that.
Yes, I wanted to just say a few words. Like about a month ago or a month and a half ago, I told you all that I had gotten in touch with Brett Rollins and that he is supposed to be sending us a report. However, I believe they're still working on it. And because I had asked for him to not only send it to Bill, but to also send it to me. And I have not received anything like that at this point. And to Mrs. Coburn, I just wanted to say that we used to get the report because Mr. Ricks would attend the meetings and he would come to a meeting once a month and fill us in on what was going on. And I don't think he is, I don't even know if they're having those meetings at this particular time because of COVID.
I still get the report from when I was on the health committee. I still get it.
Yeah, I never took you off of the email distribution list.
Well, don't. Thank
okay.
you.
Any other?
Thank you. I was editing some writing for my daughter, and I was actually really interested in it. And I'm going to share again a different website, and it's actually Summit County, and it provides a lot of really good statistics. They are from, I believe the last report was from 2019, which it must be a biannual report. It's pretty extensive, but just to put things into perspective, Ohio is 47th in health ranks 47th out of 50 states, and DC in poor health outcome. So all of the statistics regarding overdose, and they're pretty apparent that that's definitely an area that we need to focus on, in not only in Summit County but in Ohio. So I just wanted to add that. I'll send that link in the email. I was going to do that before the meeting tonight, but I forgot. Well, I didn't forget. I didn't get home in enough time. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bevick. Anybody else? I can only see like 6 of us on here for some reason. Go ahead. All right. Hearing none or seeing none?
Mr.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. If I may ask, Mr. Mayor, the next meeting of your task force, could you see what kind of plan the county has with the opioid overdoses versus vaccinations? I know there's not a whole lot of data that could drive that decision right now, but at one point, our area was a hotbed for overdoses, and I'm not sure if lingering effects from those overdoses could play any sort of factor in vaccinations, if it could be a detriment to the body, if it could be in any sort of way a health risk for the vaccination, if they could get some sort of report to see what the effects would be. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We will do a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Mr. Griffin.
I will second that.
And Mr. Heidig. All right, we're adjourning at time is 6:12. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is Monday, February 1st. Time starting the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting at 6:12. We are remote on GoToMeetings. All members are present, along with council present and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion: legislation request is the draft ordinance titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1478, Rental Property Registration Program. What the mayor and the service director is requesting this. It's under Section A, and they've added number 3, 4, and 5. And I'll read this as quickly as I can. Sometimes if you read it out loud, it makes a little bit more sense. Number 3, they're adding 3 new ones. For registration year 2021 only, any landlord who is currently at the $40 per unit rate per year has until Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 to register for the 2021 year at the $40 rate. Registration mailed must be postmarked by March 2nd, 2021. Number 4, any landlord who is currently at the $40 per unit per year rate who does not register prior to the postmark date of March 2nd, 2021 has until the end of the business day, April 2nd, 2021 to register at the new $100 per unit per year rate without incurring any late penalties. This is for registration 2020, registration year 2021 only. This is to account for the timing discrepancy between the passage of the ordinance 148-2020, its effective date and the registration date for rental units. And this is primarily to give the city and the landlords a little bit more time. The city needs to generate and send out invoices, and the landlords then have enough time to be notified and then pay for their ordinances. So we're just giving them another 30 days. If you look at this piece of legislation, If it's passed on February 7th, 2021, it gives the building department and the landlords until March 5th, 2021 to pay if they are at the $40 rate. No change on the $20 rate. I will let either the mayor or Mr. Tracy add to this.
Thank you, Councilwoman Angeloff. And we try to make it as clear as possible, but the timing is the issue. So since the legislation passed one day and it was not an emergency, still operating for those 30 days under the old rules. So it didn't go into effect till 30 days later. So if we would have passed what council passed in December, if that would have been passed during the last spring or summer or fall, it wouldn't have been an issue. So in the past legislation, we would invoice, November, you had November and December to pay for that next year. The new legislation, you have until the end of March to pay without penalty. Since the legislation that was passed in December didn't go into effect until end of January, middle of January, it's not fair to the landlords to all of a sudden go, okay, it's middle of January, we're going to charge you of $100 if you're at the $40 rate. So we wanted to give enough time. We can print out the invoices in a fairly quick manner, but it's really to get the word out to the landlords, get them invoiced. Because some landlords who have these their rental units in LLC may not be able to pay an invoice unless they get something in paper form. So this really helps the landlords. We want to, for this year only, give them some additional time to pay at the $40 rate. And then after the date, it'll go automatically to the $100 rate. And then after April 2nd, the penalty will be incurred. So it'll give them plenty of time to get the invoices out, get them notified, and then get them to pay. And then some time frames from kind of grandfathering them in at $40 rate or the new rate at $100.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anybody on the committee have any questions? Mrs. Fry?
I'm not on your committee, but I do have a question.
Anybody on the committee have any questions? I don't know if anybody's, no? All right, Mrs. Fry, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I was looking through this, and of course I read everything. And it said at the beginning, if there was a strike through, or if it was in bold, that was a change. And I see that section F, if a registration form is filed late, an additional late fee of $50 shall be imposed. So is it 50 now because they saw the strike through? It was, but this piece of legislation needs to be corrected, even if it was the last time, because it still has the strike through.
Oh, okay. Lori, did you get that?
I got it. Renee drafts the legislation, but I will go through with her tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, thank you, Mrs. Fry, for looking at that. Basically, under A, we're adding 3, 4, and 5. Nothing else has been changed on that ordinance. Do I have any questions from the body?
Mrs. Angeloff, I have a question.
Okay, Mrs. DeVedic.
Thank you. What date did the original piece of legislation go into effect? 1/48/2020. I didn't catch that because there was some.
It was January 20th. There was no emergency, so it was 30 days after it was signed.
Okay. So, and what is the date that we are from the original piece of legislation that we are adjusting in this piece of legislation? I know we're adding.
What we're not adjusting, we're amending 3, 4, and 5. So it's not an emergency. So
right.
If it's passed on February 7th, it's 30 days. That would be March 5th.
Okay.
March 2nd, I'm sorry.
So my question is, So we have not generated invoices.
We've generated invoices for the $20 rate because that's not affected by this.
Okay. So this
So,
only,
yeah.
so we have not generated invoices for the $40 rate, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So when would those typically, I guess my concern is does that mean that they won't be generated until March 2nd?
No, we'll start generating them now. Typically,
We're
they'd
doing
be
it now.
in November.
Right. Well, I guess I'm just concerned because if we haven't generated them yet and we haven't passed the piece of legislation and the rate that mail is being delivered, I understand that the landlords should definitely be expecting this, correct? Because they would ordinarily get this in maybe December the year before. I'm just wondering if we're causing still a time crunch as far as payment goes, return of payment.
Well,
Mr.
that's why
Tracy, would you like to answer that?
Well, that's why we're coming to you guys. You know, some landlords just pay it without even getting an invoice, but I know some landlords need an invoice for their records prior to paying it. So this gives them, assuming this passes committee tonight, passes first reading passage next week, we can generate those invoices next week. That gives them a little over 2.5 weeks, I believe, to pay to receive it and pay the $40. And then it gives them another 5 weeks at the $100 rate to pay before any late fees.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the original date in it? I'm sorry, I just don't have the original piece of legislation handy. I'm
March 31st.
Okay.
It was March 31st, all or nothing. There wasn't any steps.
Gotcha.
Right, there was no steps.
I just wanted some clarification for that.
Yeah, it says all rental units that the owner owns or that he operator operates no less than, it was January 1st, it was changed to March 31st of each year.
Okay.
So this gives the landlords and the building department enough time to get the invoices out so the landlords can pay, using an invoice. So we're just extending this request.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned that it's still kind of a time crunch, but that's just my opinion as far as, the mail and everything goes. But if I
hope it's not.
I hope not either, but I don't know. Our mail hasn't been great here, so that's all.
I just got a Christmas card.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Mr. Tracy or the mayor, do you have anything more to say to Mrs. Bebeck?
Councilman Heidick's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mr. Heidick?
That's all right. Thank you there, Chair. I kind of agree with Councilor DeBevick. Would it make a little more sense instead of March 2nd to move it to March 31st to accommodate for any sort of mailing error from the city and then from the landlord? I know it says postmarked by the 2nd, but given that I've received Christmas cards last week myself, and the original date's March 31st anyway, would it behoove us to just say if they're received by March 31st instead of March 2nd? Just to eliminate any errors in mailing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to agree with you that too, because we don't want to come back another 30 days from now. And so I don't know how far along the building department is with the invoices. Mr. Tracy?
Well, we can get them done. I mean, we can get them all printed out and given to our distributor, within a few days. But, we're waiting on the passage for this before we can do that.
Right.
Which is kind of the concern. I'm all for passing this one reading emergency so they can generate the invoices, but I just fear that any sort of mailing hiccups could be detrimental to a landlord and cause undue headaches for everybody.
Yeah, this is the mayor. If we go to April 30th, that's a Friday, postmarked, I assume the mail is going to be up and running in a better fashion over the next few weeks. But if you go to the 30th and it's postmarked, we may not actually get it for even longer time after that if it's still an issue, the mail delivery. So
Correct. I was looking at the end of March, not the end of April. Sorry.
March 31st, as the original mayor says. Instead of going to March 2nd, March 31st. Because the original one says it changed from January 1st to March 31st of each year.
So if it changes from March 2nd to March 31st, is your thought that then anyone after March 31st would go to the $100 rate and be late, get the late penalty?
Yes, I think that would buy enough time for everybody to assume any mail hiccups. I would agree with that, Mr. Mayor.
Chairwoman.
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Betty.
So I know we're determining dates here, and that's always a tricky a tricky process. I guess the reason that I don't like dates is because if someone is sick and the invoices don't get generated, I just want to make sure that we're giving enough time before they have the late fee, and that there's enough time to mail it. And so, in contrary to what Councilman Heidick said, while it should be enough time, what happens if we don't get them out in if something happens? I mean, they're stuff. It's, even though it's 2021, things are still happening. So I just want to make sure that we don't have to come back, as Mr. Heidick said, and revisit the date on this piece of legislation.
My only fear is that if there's not a date certain, then or postmarked date, then everything somewhat becomes arbitrary. I see what you're saying, but I think there should be a hard and fast date. You're right, anything could happen, but
and Mr. Tracy, if this is passed next week, the invoices will be going out pretty rapidly to the landlords.
I would think we'd be able to get them printed and distributed by the following Friday. That Friday.
By that Friday. What's the committee? Mrs. Fry? Go ahead, Mrs. Fry.
I'm not on your committee, but I do have a comment again. I think that we should have a specific date. I mean, everybody has a date when something is due.
Sure.
And it's like if you got an invoice for something that you owed and they say it's due tomorrow without, question, and you don't even have to have time to do online banking or whatever. If you lived in the area, you could bring it down to the city building and you could get it paid on time. I don't think that we have landlords that live in California that we're going to have a big problem with that. And I think that we do have to have a due date. And then as far as late fees are concerned, well, we can deal with those as they happen, if they happen.
Right. I definitely agree that there should be a due date. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a due date. I would just like to make sure that it is late enough before the late fee is incurred to ensure that anything could happen. That's all. That's my only point. I'm not implying that we should not have a hard and fast date, because we should, just like any other bill is.
Mr. Heidi, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. If they go out by Friday the 12th, that leaves roughly 16, 20 days turnaround from them to receive it, acknowledge it, and possibly mail a payment back. I do like what the mayor said of possibly if it would be March 31st, the hard date, received or not received or postmarked. After that, your late fees go into effect. That gives plenty of time for any mail. And I know Councilor Fry said, some out-of-state people, well, they still do business here. So we do have to respect that. And I think that if it was the 31st on the hardest date, that it's paid or it's not paid. After the 31st, if it's not postmarked, late fee, $100. Thank you.
Thank you. I've not heard from my committee, so go ahead, Mr. Short, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, Councilwoman Nina, I got an invoice here from the city that was generated on the 26th of January, okay, for my fees. It was postmarked in Cleveland on the 28th, and I received it Saturday. So that was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
That's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, and you know what? The landlords know they have to pay this fee. So this has been in the paper. It's been, everybody knows that fee's coming, and we changed that. So it wouldn't be a surprise. Mrs. Colburn, go ahead. Mrs. Colburn?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think we should go with the 31st. Everyone has a phone. If they have a problem with that, if there is a problem with the late fee, we do answer phones and we can discuss it with them. I mean, it's not like there aren't ways to contact us.
Exactly. And I don't have a problem with 31st too, only because the ordinance 148/2020, it says all rental units that the owner owns, they have till March 31st of each year. So that would kind of put this and that together as one date. So we don't have March 2nd, April 2nd, March 31st. We could just have it all done on by March 31st.
I do understand that it had to do with us not having it passed and legislation, that people might argue that it wasn't passed in time. And that was what the whole purpose was, that the ordinance wasn't passed and made law. That was why we were giving it more time, because it had to have, so we need to turn it into an emergency when we pass it. Is that what has to happen for it to not be 60 days?
I would think we'd have to have an emergency, and that way they would have from, I'm just saying, March 7th till February 7th to March 31st. It gives them even more than 30 days to have that paid. Mr. Tracy? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Medges, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to get this in a timely fashion, it's got to be emergency.
Yeah.
Right.
Simple as that.
And Mr. Heideken said he was okay with us making that emergency, and Mr. Greer's got his hand up. He's on our committee, so.
Mr. Greer, you got your hand up?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. No, I really agree with trying to keep this as simple as possible and all these other dates. So 31st is, I really like just merging that with what we already have. It really does keep it in line with what we have. It simplifies it. I really don't know. I mean, I understand why it was stepped like this, but it really just keeps it simple. It don't need to be complicated. And I fully, like, after the 31st, it's late. Like it's postmarked the 31st, and we just move forward. It is kind of, I mean, I understand it's easy to follow this, but if we just make it the 31st, it just falls in line with the original ordinance that we already had.
So do we have to amend our reading?
No, Well,
change it
do we
to
have to do
emergency?
that? Because our original one says all rental units
No.
by March 31st. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tracy, go ahead.
Emergency wording.
Oh, yes, yes, we all have to amend that. Mr. Tracy?
So I think what we'd be saying then is that no one pays $100 unless they're late.
Correct.
But I mean, that wasn't the initial intent of the ordinance, I don't think. You're kind of saying that the $100 isn't starting until next year then, unless you don't pay on time this year.
Yep.
So I just wanted to point that out. If that's the way you guys want to go, it's fine, but.
Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Heidick has his hand up. We can't hear you, Nina.
You good there, Chair?
She's telling you to talk.
Okay. The way it looks is the additions A3 for registration year 2021 only. Landlord currently at the 40 unit has until Tuesday, March 2nd, should be March 31st to register at the $40 rate for 2021 and postmarked by March 31st is how that it looks like what we're saying that should say. And then any landlord currently at 40 per unit does not register prior to the postmark date of March 31st would have until the end of the day, the 31st, to register to avoid the late fees. If I'm correct there.
But the difference is that, see, the dates are different. So April 2nd is a different date. So they're contradicting if it says what you said, Mr. Heidick, correct? So
correct. I would think that if what we're saying is correct, then all these dates should say March 31st on them.
But it's a moot point then to say has until the end of business day, March 31st, to register at the new $100 per unit rate, because in number 3, you're saying has until Tuesday, March 31st to register for the 2021 year at $40 rate. But in the next sentence, then you're saying at that same date to register at the new $100 rate per unit.
Without penalties. So that would be he's going to register at the higher rate without having to pay penalties.
But it's the same date. That's what I'm saying. If you keep it all marked.
So that would have to say April. That would continue to say April 1st. Thank you. Yes,
right.
You are correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we would need to leave that one stay at that date. Can Mrs. Angeloff? Can you?
I believe her audio and her video is delayed, but I sent her a text message trying to let her know.
I would just tell her to get off the call and get back on.
If you could text her to say exit the meeting and then enter it, that worked for me before.
Mr. Tracy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
All right. I get where you're coming from. It does appear that if everybody pays by March 31st, no one's paying $100 this year.
Yeah, essentially, if it doesn't go through, the only difference is, that pretty much everyone will be at the $40 rate if we move it to March 31st. Because right now, everyone is just at 100. I mean, the way it's written currently. So we're just offering them the chance to stay at 40 if they, pay early by March 2nd.
So if they pay early, they're essentially buying themselves one more year at the 40 rate.
Correct.
Right. So therefore, I think that we have to think about this a little bit harder, or we're not going to get any more money.
Right.
And that was the whole purpose of this piece of legislation.
It's kind of like maybe we don't do March 31st. Maybe we meet March 15th or something.
Or I have Nina on the phone.
Okay.
All right, Nina, you have to talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't even get out of it. I can't even get out. So we will review this next, or you're just going to put it on hold until next time? Or I couldn't hear, so I don't know. Joyce,
We should leave it. If they pay by the 2nd, they get the opportunity to come in at $40.
Okay. All right.
Or correct, Craig?
That's right.
If,
Correct.
If they pay by the 2nd, they can come in at 40. If they don't pay by the 2nd, they're coming in at 100.
But they can.
Penalty, yes. So we're leaving this March 2nd, or are we going to March 31st?
Well, this was giving them one more year to come in at a lower rate, the way this is written. And we were kind of jumping ahead and going straight to $100. So I think we should probably leave this in here and just do it, because as much as we want to just go for the 100, this is giving people an opportunity if they can do it. But I know the dates are kind of crunchy, but if we let them come in, if they read it, if they do it by the 2nd, they get a discount. If they don't, they're coming in at the higher rate. What do you think, Justin? This is where we get to talk.
Well,
as committee
here's what I think. If the concern is that mail may be slow and the turnaround for mail on both parties might have a delay, maybe we don't go to the 31st. Maybe we go an additional week past March 2nd instead, just to kind of ease up. So that would be...
The only change would be to March 9th.
It's a compromise. It meets in the middle a little bit. It gives a little bit more time for delayed mail, and still holds somewhat true to the
whole concept.
Yeah, the concept to this.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, the 9th is fine. I think
we
that...
don't change any other dates.
Correct. And it still goes past the March 31st typical deadline at the end. Before penalties.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Okay.
We want to be as fair as possible.
Okay. The only date, Nina, I'm talking for you only because it's hard for you to get in here.
I can't even
the only date we're going to change are the March 2nd dates to March 9th. Is that okay with committee members first?
That is, I'm okay with that.
I can live with that.
Nina, shake your head.
Okay. So we're just changing, oh goodness gracious.
March 9th.
To March 9th. And March 9th.
All other dates on the paper will stay the same.
Are we adding, I forgot what we were going to add.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Mrs. Debevic, are you okay with that? Mr. Heidig?
I'd agree to March 9th. I think that's very fair, giving an extra week.
Mrs. Debevic, I saw your head shake, but others may not have.
Yeah, so I think that it's a compromise. I want Mr. Griffin's mailman. If you guys mail in 2 days, I'm just gonna throw that out there because I am still waiting for items but I don't think we have actually a mail person right now. So that could be
Tracy.
So if this comes out of committee tonight to committee of the whole, and is going through committee of the whole, then we'll start now, even before we can start printing now at that rate. So that I don't think it will take us until the 12th. We'll try to start printing them now, assuming it's going to pass on the 8th, so that we can start getting stuff out as soon as the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Start getting stuff in postmarked. So I think that'll help save us some time as well. I had my dates mixed up. I was thinking today was the 8th. And
Okay.
also, we need to make sure this gets emergency wording on it. Unless it's already on there.
I will make sure it's emergency wording. Mrs. Fry, are you okay with that change?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine
Mr.
with that.
Jacobs? Are you okay with the change to the 8th?
I'm voting no on this, so I would say no, but go ahead.
9th, I think.
9th, okay.
Yes.
All right. Who else? Mr. Griffin, are you okay with the change to the 9th?
Yes, Councilwoman Coburn, the 9th is fine with me.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all of our council members. So do we have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Greer has made a motion for us to call for this tonight. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Right, okay, Mr. Greer made a motion for us to call for the draft ordinance amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1478, Rental Property Registration Program. We're going to be adding emergency wording and changing it to the amended March 9th, 2021 date. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Do we have any other
Thank you,
miscellaneous?
Joyce. Reboot. Can you hear me now?
I can barely hear
Joyce,
you, Nina.
I'm back.
Are you ready to take over?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm going to try.
Flash.
Can you hear me now? Can
Yeah.
you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It said Nina has left. I haven't left.
Okay.
I'm going to continue. It says we do have some current legislation. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Ordinance number 01/2021 is the ordinance authorizing the rezoning of 4 acres on Austin Drive from C3 to RA16. This is the
You're breaking up.
That's the reason I answered the phone.
Can't hear you.
That's your number, right?
You were breaking up. We can't hear you right now. I think Mrs. Coburn want to take over until she finds out what's going on.
Ingenuity.
I don't have the legislation she's talking about now.
Okay. Are you on
Is
committee
it
also?
from last week, Nina?
It's the rezoning up on Austin Drive.
We've had 2 readings on this, and next week would be the 3rd reading.
Okay. Nina?
Okay, hold on. Can you hear her now? Say something, Nina.
Hello?
Can anybody hear her?
A little bit.
Not speaking.
Try it again.
Nina, talk.
Have her call in on her phone, Laura.
That's what.
Yeah.
No, you're on the phone on my cell phone. You need to dial into the number. Okay, I'll get.
Well, if we're talking about the property, we'll be voting on that, our third reading on that property. That's next week, right? We
That's
vote
right.
on that next week.
That's right.
And that's all we have for planning, correct?
That's right.
And she sent us pictures of that housing.
I did. This is Trevor here. I did share those with Councilwoman Angeloff, and I believe she mentioned that she was emailing the rest of the council members with those.
Mrs. DeBevick, did you have a question?
I did. I was just wondering, is there any comments from my committee regarding this piece of legislation?
Who's that? Nina or Carla?
That's Nina.
That was Nina on a delay.
Is there any comment from the body?
Carla would like to ask a question, Nina.
Okay, and I did email everybody a proposed. Oh my God. Well, I'm going to finish on the phone. I'm going to finish on the phone. Okay?
Yep.
Yes, just next week will be the third reading on this.
I think our neighbors on the other side of it.
Hello?
Hello, we're listening.
She's attempting to dial in. That's the delay from her previous audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carla, ask your question.
Okay, I just didn't want to interrupt. Mr. Hunt, what is the perimeter of notifications that go out for a zoning change like this?
Okay, I think I'm on.
I think we're required to do 250 feet from the area.
Okay, and I noticed on the drawing that Mrs. Angeloff was kind enough to share with us that it still had dead-end roads on there. I guess I have two concerns. First of all, my father-in-law happens to live on that street back there, and he's very close to it, and he did not receive a certified letter, but I'm guessing he's not within 250 feet, nor did his neighbors. And when I spoke with them, they are very concerned about that dead-end road that goes right into essentially their backyards, and they continue to be concerned about that. So I just am here to express that concern, and I want to know, how firm is that drawing? I know that dead-end roads are not. They're not legal, I guess, in Barberton. So what would happen if it turned into like a cul-de-sac, basically, rather than a dead end road into these people's backyard?
So that we're still working through them on their preliminary site plan. I think they are more or less responding to some of the comments they got from council. Greg Tracy and I will review this. This is more so the rezoning, and I know allowing the rezoning certainly opens the doors to allowing townhome development there. But the planning commission will still have a crack to review the final plat and how they're going to subdivide that land. So that will go before planning commission. Certainly, if there's Please send out and I can work through that with the applicant.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. I apologize.
Sorry if I'm breaking up here, but essentially, if there's comments pertaining to the development, it still needs to go through Planning Commission. So, however they parcel that off, this is only a preliminary plan. I know the council is reviewing this and they're seeing the images that are provided by the developer, but this is for the rezoning, I guess, not that actual development per se. I think it's good to be mindful of what can go in there, but if there's concerns here, we can clear some of those up through Planning Commission still. That, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I guess it's a little bit unfortunate just because some of those homeowners, well, most of those homeowners back there are elderly and weren't even aware of it. So even though they, just because they aren't, they weren't within the distance. So I just received a few questions and I just wanted to report back. I do think as council, we need to be mindful of a preliminary sketch that does include a dead end street when there is an alternative option that falls within Barberton code. So,
and just to be clear, the dead ends, the stub streets aren't outright prohibited. There's a length. I think it's 250 feet.
Okay.
Stub streets can't be longer than 250 feet per the development code. So,
okay.
Sorry, I'm throwing around the 250 feet a lot tonight, but that's in the development code.
Well, then it will be easy to remember when I repeat. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Heidick, go ahead. You have the floor. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome back. I can hear you fine.
Well,
now.
I'm on the phone.
Oh, well, again, welcome back.
Thanks.
Director Hunt, this is 4 acres of C3. Just looking by housing there, I spoke with Director Flaker this morning at length. I'm looking at what we could assume to the general fund from property taxes versus if it was actually a business there and how many jobs it would take to equal what we would generate in property taxes. And my question to you is, with your background, if houses are built, that's pretty much it. The infrastructure is there. Nobody's going to ever want to rezone or build a business over many water lines and sewer lines. A commercial business could be torn down and redeveloped and rezoned. Do you think that it's a good thing to lose 4 acres of C3? Because what I see a problem is if these are houses being built and people move in that don't work in the city, depending on what their work city is, we're going to be getting either zero in income tax or a decent amount of income tax. But if they work in the city, we'll be benefiting greatly. But the problem is if it turns into that the demographic that moves in is retired, Social Security and pensions are not subject to local income taxes. So we don't benefit anything but the property tax. So I guess my question is it worth rezoning 3 or 4 acres of C3, possibly business, to a potential only property tax revenue generating stream? Thank you.
That's a fair question. Thank you. So what I'd like to say is I think that this site's been marketed for years. To answer your question, I think there's pros and cons, and it's hard to summarize all that might come with that in just one brief. It's a loaded question, right? So there's a lot to that. I think if you look at what potential business comes in there, that could determine how many taxes you're getting, right? If you're bringing in a fast food restaurant as opposed to a department store, right? That's going to be a big difference in terms of what you're bringing in potentially. But you're right, residential oftentimes is not beneficial to the city's bottom line, but it is beneficial in terms of providing quality and affordable places to live, right? So this is market rate housing, but I think the price point is good. But to answer your question, you're certainly not going to see the revenue that would be supported by a commercial business. But there's also disadvantages to that, right? There's additional car traffic that could be generated. You talk about the neighbors there in Austin Estates, they could see an uptick in in terms of the users coming nearby where, maybe there's noise or other nuisances that they would see. So I guess that's hard to really summarize. This was requested by the property owner. So any property owner in the city of Barberton has the right to petition Planning Commission as well as City Council for the rezoning. I think to your point, this can be made up in other places, whether through rezoning to industrial land where appropriate or rezoning to commercial land from less intensive uses. It doesn't need to be, I guess, there's trade-offs that can occur. So,
would the owner of the property be more open to a more restricted zoning for business instead of, I know you said fast food restaurant, which I do believe can go in C3, but looking at the map there, the only entrance would be Austin Drive to get to this, unless they're somehow using the back lot over by those offices. Would they be open to a more restrictive zoning that could mix somehow rather than straight C3 or straight residential?
You're asking if they'd be open to like a zoning that would allow for a mixed use development
without the wide openness of a C3 that could potentially house nuisances to the neighborhood. Yes.
That's another fair question. So I think our development code, I've mentioned this a couple times. I think it's maybe not in a spot right now that allows for, it's fairly suburban in nature, I guess, meaning that it doesn't allow for a mix of uses. So that's something I'd like to study. I think I've mentioned this to council, that our development code probably needs some revision. It should be a priority, but I guess so. It's hard to state that, the developer has requested this. So I don't know if they would in fact be open to a development like you suggested, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board or the committee? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. This third reading will be February 7th, 21 on the rezoning of that parcel from C3 to RA16 single family attachment. I want to do miscellaneous real quickly if I can. I'm sorry I've taken up so much of everybody's time. Computers I'm just not happy with, but I just want to say that at the Planning Commission meeting on January 20th, we had 3 new businesses asking for conditional use permits. One did not, it was tabled till February 17th. It's called Copart. It's an online virtual auto auction that will be looked at again February 17th. We do have a secondhand store at the old West End Hardware. The owner deals with high-end estate sales. She does not accept anything on consignment. And the second business that received a conditional use permit is a tattoo parlor at 560 West Tusk. The owner is a Barberton resident, and his mother owns Altered Relics. He has a lot of background because originally 20-some years ago that was called Sweet Revenge Ice Cream Parlor, where his sister and my daughter worked there. And then it was turned into Tony's Speakeasy. So he would like to leave a lot of the original neon lights and the bar and the painting that's on the wall. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Angeloff?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I received, thank you. I received one email from Mrs. Tracy Black and also a letter from Mrs. Heather Laurie. Can I read those off to you real quick? I was asked to read these to you.
I don't know. I think that has to go through the clerk's office. I mean, Lori has to read that. You received a letter from who?
Mrs. Tracy Black, the owner of the secondhand shop.
Oh, okay. And who is the other one from?
And also Mrs. Heather Laurie about the secondhand shop and the tattoo shop, a resident.
Okay. No,
Okay.
those should, Mr. President, those should be given to the council president to read. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Jaber, if you'd like to email those or give those to Lori, then she can read those at the next meeting. Unfortunately, council should not be reading that. It should go through the clerk, so we have record of it on tape. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn, do I have a second?
I will second.
I'll second it.
Well, everybody did.
Okay, was that Mr. Greer first?
Yep.
Okay, and we are adjourned at 7:06. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for helping, Joyce. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce.
Okay, next up is Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The time is 7:07, and we are beginning the meeting for Finance and Personnel. The date is February 1st, 2021. It is Monday. We are on GoToMeeting, which is a virtual meeting site. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council people. And yes, as noted on my agenda sheet, we have a couple of requests for legislation for this meeting. The first is a draft ordinance titled Authorized Payment to Summit County. This is to authorize the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Summit County in the amount of $64,000 for the 2021 radio access fees, which enables all city radios to be on the county-wide radio system and declaring an emergency. This request was made to both safety and they referred it to finance. It was given to us by the fire chief, Mr. Rob Persley. The city has 259 radios, and they are in vehicles, handheld radios, and also station radios. This does not include the Swisscom radios, which are separate, and those costs are split between our partners and Swisscom. But the amount, $64,000, will be shared by the different departments that do have these 259 radios. And that's all I have on that. Do I have any questions regarding this piece of legislation? I don't see any hands, so therefore, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I will make a motion.
Okay. Motion made
And I will
by
second.
Mrs. DeBell and seconded by Nina.
Yes.
Did you second that? Okay.
Yes, I
thank you.
did.
All right, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, that passed unanimously. All right, the second piece of legislation we have is a draft ordinance, and this is to authorize payment to Ports Petroleum. This was, I got a letter from Mr. Greg Tracy, the service director, and this authorization is to authorize the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Ports Petroleum in the amount of $9,610.31 for gasoline and diesel fuels and declaring an emergency. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation?
No.
Okay, I see no hands, so do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I will make a motion to call for this piece of ordinance.
Thank you, Nina. Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by?
I will second it.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. All right, then under miscellaneous, I did receive a letter from Mrs. Doherty, and this letter is for an ordinance to amend the civil service rule number 6, I think, in order to electronically enhance our testing and recruitment efforts throughout the classified service. This amendment will provide flexibility in the testing process by allowing electronic applications and examinations. Civil Service Commission will continue to certify eligibility lists as required by civil service rules. The rule that is being amended is going to be amended by adding a new paragraph 2B, and it's titled Entrance Examination for Classified Service, to read as follows. The Civil Service Commission may, by majority vote of the Commission, schedule entrance examinations in the classified service through the National Testing Network or other web-based testing vendor for the administration of entrance examinations for classified service. To the extent any other rule conflicts with this rule prevails. This amendment is scheduled for a vote of the Civil Service Commission on February 3rd, 2021 at the 5:30 p.m. meeting in the Mayor's Conference Room. The changes that this will bring about is that the test will now be taken online, and the test will be administered by a private company. The increased cost will be paid directly to the company giving the test. And I believe that is by the people that are going to take the test, that they will be paying money directly to the company giving the test. Beth, do you have anything to add to what I've said? And was I clear in explaining what this is about?
Yes, Carol, can you hear me? Okay, can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, it does open up our recruitment efforts and it reaches a wider audience. So the testing fee is more expensive, but the candidate has the opportunity to add other departments to the list. So much like an ACT, SAT test, you can list the colleges that you can have your scores sent to. This test allows candidates to pick and choose the departments that they want their test scores sent to. So it's a $60 fee versus a $20 fee that we currently ask of candidates, but they also get the availability of more departments to send their scores to. Carol, you had called me earlier today, and as I explained to you on the phone call, this is a proctored test via an individual that will proctor the exam of a candidate, or it could be done at a certified. Well, I say certified. I don't know what that means. I shouldn't have said that. But that would be done at a testing site, much like the SHRM exam is done at a testing site. Nursing board exams are done at a testing site. And they're all vetted through the various boards that allow these tests to be had. So I feel confident that it would be proctored to not necessarily eliminate cheating, if you will, but certainly monitors for that environment. And I do believe it's a good thing. The police chief brought it to our attention a couple of months ago. He would like to try this. And I see it as, especially during COVID, but maybe even beyond, it allows candidates for a broader spectrum of opportunities, and it also helps with our recruitment and advertising because the company does use different job sites for allowing candidates to know that this testing is available to them.
Thank you, Beth. Does anybody have any questions for Beth?
Nope.
Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any real questions. I just have a statement that I'm really excited for this new update, and I hope we do take this past the pandemic, because I guess I do have a question. But the fact that we're leaning on a little bit more technology that does have the ability to have a fallback too as well, a redundancy plan is awesome. I just wanted to clarify that the currently the civil service exam is taken, and it's only taken for a specific job. Is that how that works now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And this will, just again to clarify, this will give the ability to submit to all departments or any department that test
for that specific jobs. So
okay.
If it's a police job, it would be distributed to cities that are looking for police candidates. If it's a fire job, it would be distributed to those departments looking for firefighters. Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
It's not a one catch-all. It can't Mr. Greer, it can't be one application for all jobs, because most jobs have different minimum qualifications. So it would be for a particular job, but it could be across many municipalities.
Awesome. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you. Mrs. Doherty, I'm just curious. Do you think that this? I'm pleased with the decision, but do you think that it could cause us difficulty in scoring the best applicants if perhaps surrounding cities have higher pay, or do you think that this could be limiting as well? I'm just curious.
I can't answer that, Mrs. DeBevick. What I can say is that we put up our minimum qualifications. We also inform the testing vendor of extra credit. So, for instance, police and fire, and actually, I believe all classified positions, if you have military background, depending on the military background you have, you can either get 15 or 20% extra credit. They don't certify our list. That can only be done by the Civil Service Commission, but they can include our extra credit points. So when it gets to the city of Barberton, we would see a list that should include the point system and everything else, just like you would if a local vendor did the testing, scored the test, and then civil service secretary would add in the extra credit points, and then from that you come up with your certified eligible list. The best candidate for the position is based on a 1 out of 10 decision making process.
So the way that the way that I was thinking that it worked, though, would be, and I'm just going to throw out random cities just to make a point, or just to answer the question, basically. So let's say Barberton, Norton, and Coventry were all hiring a police officer, and they all take the same proctored test through the same company. And one, let's say Coventry pays more than Barberton and Norton, but it automatically goes to all communities, where someone may have just applied to Barberton, but they ended up through this process. So they can apply to multiple jobs, correct? Multiple of the same job, so multiple departments.
If they're all offering a test, yes.
Okay. So that was my question is, do you think that it could actually end up limiting just based on pay or other determinants?
I suppose it could. I can't say that it wouldn't, But what I would say is that this is the particular testing vendor that we're looking at now is National Testing Network, and they're insinuating themselves into the Ohio market. So there are other cities that are using this company, not anything that is on a boundary line of Barberton. So I suppose there could be some competition between the cities that allow for this kind of testing, and it would just depend on, because I don't believe there's a hierarchy. Now I will look into that because that's a good question. Like for instance, SAT, ACT, I think you just list your top 3. I don't know that it's taken in order in which you list it, or if all 3 are competing against each other. That I just don't know. Okay. So I'd have to look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have, Mrs. Fry.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bevick, and thank you, Beth. No one else has any other questions for Mrs. Doherty? No? Okay. No. We will have that draft for the next meeting, I would assume. Then all of us also got a letter today from Mr. Flaker updating us on what is going on with Rita. And it's good news because the final extract has been uploaded into Rita's system, and the city of Barberton is now fully live. Taxpayers will be able to go to Rita's website and create an account and file their taxes. And Barberton businesses will be able to do that as well. We normally did taxpayer assistant days for CCA. And a lot of the citizens from Barberton did go to that. However, because of COVID, Mr. Flaker feels that Rita is not going to be doing that again this year. It hasn't officially been taken off the table, but he thinks that because of the pandemic, they are not going to meet with people to help them with their taxes. So anyway, there are.
Oh my.
Another one.
What happened?
Are other ways that they can go online to file their taxes, and then they could also take their taxes to a Rita office. The only problem is that the closest one is 25 minutes away from Barberton. So Jeremy has made a suggestion that perhaps they could be gathered here in Barberton, and then Rita would be able to pick them up, or somehow we could get them to Rita, and then they would do the taxes for the people. And he is going to bring us up to date on that as soon as he hears back about whether or not they're going to meet in person to do the tax assistant days with taxpayers, and whether or not people will be able to drop off their taxes here in the city and still have them arrive at the Rita office. Also, the due date for taxes is still April 15th, as it has been every year, and that will remain the deadline. And if Mr. Flaker is here and has more comments to make about what I've just said, or if he wants to correct something that I said, please chime in.
Yes, Mrs. Fry, I'm here. What you said is correct. I did speak with Rita some today regarding my one suggestion to them. The one thing that they were looking into was kind of their finance department up there kind of put the kibosh to that. However, even though kind of axed that idea, it's still not dead. We do have a workaround, and it's not a major issue. So it would still be a process of the taxpayers of Barberton being able to turn in their tax information here in Barberton, and the information getting to Rita securely. safely and securely. One thing that I do know, as we are all aware, unfortunately with the post office right now, we really just hate to see people just mailing tax forms up to Rita in the mail, because who knows if it will get to them, when it will get to them, and everything. So we want to try to come up with a way that we can still have the taxpayers be able to file their taxes, but make sure it's safe and secure for them, and make sure their information is getting to Rita in a secure manner. So I'm hoping to hear more again this week from Rita. At that time, I will reveal what the idea was. I don't want to say the idea and then for some reason it can't be put into place. I don't want to make promises that can't happen. So I will, but if my feeling is, and me talking with Rita, their feeling, it will be a go. It's just a matter of getting one more thing ironed out. It's only one thing left to iron out, and it's not that major of an issue. So I like I said, I'll keep you all a part of the conversations. I myself will try to do e-file this week on Rita's website so I can report back to everyone. If it's easier than CCA, from my understanding it is. I was also speaking with the Norton Finance Director earlier today, and she was saying how easy the fast file is even. So if people didn't want to create an account through Rita, fast file is, I guess, very easy according to her. It basically takes 5 minutes for a person to file their own taxes using fast file through Rita. So there is that option, but like I said, I plan on doing my taxes this weekend. When I do those taxes, I will try to do, I'll do e-file. That way I can see what kind of screens everyone's going to see and see if it walks a person through the process, because that might be a good way for some people to do their taxes. I do know, though, a lot of people did take advantage of the taxpayer assistance days. Rita assured me that if it wasn't for the pandemic, they would have came out 4 or 5 times. And they assured me that next year, as long as this pandemic's over, which I think everyone hopes it gets over sooner than later, that they will be out next year to do taxpayer assistance days. So the taxpayer assistance days aren't completely done, but if I had to guess this year, just due to the pandemic, they won't be going on, but next year they should start back up the taxpayer assistance days. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and thank you for always keeping us in the loop by sending us those detailed emails, because if we get questions, we do have something to refer to that we can talk to our constituents if anyone should call about the new tax company that we're using. So keep those emails coming, and we'll wait for your update about you trying to file your taxes and whatever other information that you have about Rita. Thank you very much. Moving forward, does anyone else have any comments or questions for finance? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay, motion made
I will
by
second
Carl
that.
and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff, and we are adjourned at 7:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute break, and I'm going to change some notes here, and then we'll start our meeting.
Mr. President?
Yep.
I believe Councilor Jaber forwarded the emails he wanted to read to the clerk there. I know it's difficult some citizens don't know who to email or how to email, that I believe he just got it sent over to her. So if she's able to read them tonight.
I'll check on it right now.
Thank you much.
I don't have anything. I just did a refresh.
Yeah.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
She never got those.
I'll send it again right now. Double check real quick. No, we can do it next week. No big deal. Let me check real quick.
Next week's legislative. That's why
it'll have to be 2 weeks.
That's why I was, and like I said, I know some citizens are emailing just who they know, and we just got to make sure we forward anything to be read to the clerk. It's different when we don't have everybody and citizens in the room with each other, which I miss dearly.
Don't we all?
Mm-hmm.
Don't they have to be in by 4 o'clock?
Supposed to be.
On Friday before the meeting. Yes, 4 o'clock Friday before the meeting.
No worries. We'll send it. She was just
okay.
Both emails were just very disappointed how Mrs. Coburn called them trash and trash digger. That's the only thing that was on there important. We'll wait till next week.
Okay, is everybody back?
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know guest number 1 is the Parks Director.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have a computer with the camera stuff yet, but I'll be tapped in soon.
Well, I do, and it's still not working.
There's a lot of hiccups. There's a lot of things, gas codes and everything. I'm just trying to get caught up.
Thank you for
Okay,
attending.
we'll get this meeting going. Okay, today is Monday, February 1st, 2021. This is Barberton City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. I call this meeting to order at 7:32. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Okay. Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
And Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Okay, citizens addressing council. We have one letter. Clerk, would you like to read that?
Yes. This is a letter, an email from Mr. Robert Augustinovich. It was updated today, so I'll read the newest version. I have contacted Senator Vernon Sykes, Senator Roninger, Representative Bill Romer, and Serb about this disparity, and I have a Zoom meeting with Representative Galinsky on February the 2nd about this and other issues for Barberton Norton Fire Study. What makes these 24 96-hour firemen, CBA IAFF Local 329 special above other Barberton City public employees, other cities' public employees, and private union members, that they earn 8.3 hours of sick time for every 80 hours worked without limit? This is appalling. Other disparity issues, Barberton Fire Union, CBA Article 31 sick leave, Barberton Fire Department contract CBA IAFF Local 329 that appear to be inconsistent with the provisions of Ohio Revised Code 124.38 through 124.39, covering all public collective bargaining agreements, covering all other Barberton City public employees, of the appointing authority of the City of Barberton, Ohio Revised Code 124.38 sick leave, 124.38 sick leave. Each of the following shall be entitled for each completed 80 hours of service to sick leave of 4 6/10 hours with pay. Joint fire study to correct all disparity between Barberton Public Fire Union overtime rate and other disparity issues, city employees, Barberton, Norton. Does the Barberton Public Fire Union, IAF, Local 329 support the completed joint fire department study between the City of Barberton and City of Norton, Ohio Fire Departments? Will they come down off their high horse and fix their appalling public union contract with the citizens of Barberton and Norton they serve? Wow. Why are Barberton 24-hour, 96-hour firemen getting 138.96 hours more of sick time above than firemen in other cities and townships? Firemen and Barberton 40-hour 2080 firemen. What makes these 24 96-hour firemen special above other public and private union members that they earn 8.3 hours of sick time for every 80 hours worked? From CERT Collective Bargaining Agreement, Ohio.gov, Barberton Fire, CBA Article 31, Sick Leave, Section 2, accrued. Employees assigned to 24-hour shifts shall earn sick leave at the rate of 8 3/10 hours for every 80 hours worked or compensated. All other employees shall earn sick leave at the rate of 4 6/10 hours for every 80 hours worked or compensated. Sick leave shall accumulate without limit. Barberton firemen assigned to 24-hour shifts earns 8.3 hours sick time for every 80 hours worked. That's 48 hours a week times 52 weeks equals 2,496 hours a year divided by 80 hours equals 31.2 times 8.3 hours equals 258.96 hours of sick time equals 32 8-hour work days a year. Barberton firemen assigned to a 40-hour shift earns 4.6 hours of sick time for every 80 hours worked. That 40 hours a week times 52 weeks equals 2,080 hours a year divided by 80 hours equals 26 times 4.6 hours equals 119.6, or 120 hours equals 15 8-hour work days. Other regular full-time employees of many other city workers and township fire departments shall be credited with sick leave at the rate of 10 hours per month or 15 8-hour work days per year for a total of 120 hours of sick time a year. Stay safe and well, Robert Augustinovich.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we go into our committee reports, we have Angela Smith from the Fair Housing Contact Service. The floor is all yours. You have 5 minutes, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Smith, and I'm with Fair Housing Contact Service. I am the Education Outreach Coordinator, and I do want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak with you this evening. The reason why I'm here is because I wanted to reintroduce our agency to you with regards to the services that we provide in the community. Fair Housing Contact Service has been servicing Summit, Medina, Portage, and Stark counties for 55 years. So we're going into our 56th year this year. And some of the services that we do provide would be housing discrimination, which we do assist clients in filing complaint. We educate the public and investigate claims of discriminations while working with landlords to help them understand what their rights and responsibilities are with regards to discrimination. Two of our highest calls with the discrimination would be disabilities, mainly with people who require animals for disabilities, and then family status. We have a lot of landlords that may make properties unavailable due to lead paint if there's a child or children under the age of 6. So those are some of the main complaints that we get, although we do get multiple other types of complaints as well. We also provide housing counseling services such as default and foreclosure prevention, homebuyer education classes, pre-purchase counseling for first-time home buyers, reverse mortgage counseling for senior citizens, and refinance information or education for homeowners. We also provide tenant landlord information and education. We do conduct free landlord and tenant workshops occasionally. I've done maybe about 4 of them in Barberton over the last maybe 2-3 years. We help tenants and landlords understand their rights and responsibilities in the rental process. Our goal is to educate and inform them so that we can prevent disagreements from happening. We also provide community education and outreach. So we, along with the fair housing education, we also do, like I said, the tenant workshops, and we provide social services with CEUs. So we come out and talk to them. We talk to the public. We can arrange for interpretation for the deaf and the hard of hearing, and for clients that also speak a different language other than English. All of our services are free, and I know I did that probably faster than 5 minutes. Are there any questions? No questions?
No questions.
No questions, but thank you very much for the information.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Smith, do you have a number that we can reach you? Could you leave it with the clerk here, or send her an email with the number?
Yes, actually, I did put it. I put all my information in the chat.
Okay, well. Thank you very much.
Yep, everything's there.
Yes,
I appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and thanks for waiting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll go right into our committee reports, and the first one off is Mrs. Angeloff with Planning, Annexation, and Codes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met this evening at 6:12 remotely. On to meeting, and halfway through, I'm on the telephone. All of my members were present, all of council was present, and guests as noted. Because the computer was acting up, I will go ahead and ask my co-chairman, Mrs. Coburn, to do the legislature request, the draft ordinance, if you don't mind, Mrs. Coburn.
I don't mind. We will be, well, I don't mind, but I lost everything I was thinking of. The draft ordinance we'll be calling for, we are going to be adding emergency wording to the draft ordinance, amending Barberton Codified Ordinance Chapter 1478, Rental Property Registration Program. We'll be changing the date March 2nd, 2021 to March 9th, 2021. Everything else will be leaving as is, but we will be amending that to have emergency wording when we call for that next week. That was passed unanimously to come out. And now I'm going to give it back to Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. That's what I was picking up as it was jerking around March 9th and adding the emergency. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We have a current legislation, which is an ordinance 01-2020. The third reading will be February 7th, and it's rezoning of the 4 acres on Austin Drive from C3 to RA16. A lot of good comments from the council people regarding the layout of the site plan and the townhouses. I just want to make say one thing, that this piece of property has sat for 20 years and it was actually bought through an auction. So keep that in mind with the rezoning. Miscellaneous discussion. We at the Planning Commission meeting on January 20th, we had 3 applicants for a conditional use permit. One was tabled, that is Copart. It's an online virtual auto auction, and it's been tabled till February 17th, our next meeting. We have a new secondhand store at the Old West End Hardware. The owner deals with high-end estate sales, no consignments. She does not accept any consignments. The third business we have is a tattoo parlor at 560 West Tuscarawas. He's a Barberton resident. His mother owned Altered Relics, and he would like to keep as much original inside that building that he can. And with that, I pass.
Okay, Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes.
Okay, for the record, 01-2021, the third reading is February 8th.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are
That's
absolutely
all
right.
We just want to get it on the record.
I wrote down February 8th, but I said the 7th. Thank you for the correction.
Okay, we just wanted on the record for that.
Yes, February 8th. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Greer with Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, February 1st, 2021 at 6:01 p.m. We're virtual. All committee members were present. All council members were present, and guests noted by the clerk. Topics of discussion: there was no request for legislation today. Miscellaneous discussion: we discussed the recent road conditions with the winter weather that came through, and general consensus across the committee and council thanking the road crews for being dedicated to the service of our city and handling that right. I also provided some statistics that I got from Mr. Tracy, our service director, via email when I asked him about how many trucks and lane miles we have. He provided an answer of that we have approximately 250 lane miles here in the city and up to 10 trucks when everything's working optimal. That puts our trucks, and this is just a fun fact, I guess, that puts each truck, if we have 10 trucks, our optimal setting, each truck has to manage 25 miles. And things hardly ever go right, so we probably never have full 10 trucks on the road, meaning that our crews are out doing more than 25 lane miles of road per truck every time they have to hit the road and treat it or plow. With that, there was no other miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:05 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is City Utilities and Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met January the 25th at virtually. We had no request for legislation at that time. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
Mrs. DeBevick, your sound.
Sorry, I thought I clicked that already. Public Welfare and Safety met last week, and we had 2 requests for legislation. The first one was referred to Finance, and it is a draft ordinance authorizing the payment to Summit County, authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Summit County in the amount of $64,000 for the 2021 radio access fees, which enables all city radios to be on the county-wide radio system, and declaring an emergency. This is for radios in all of the departments. And so while the fire chief has asked for this piece of legislation to be referred to Finance, it is not all incurred by the radios for the fire department. It's all city radios. So that was referred to Finance. And the second draft ordinance is titled Disposal of Vehicles, Police Department. And it's an ordinance authorizing the police chief to scrap or salvage 29 vehicles deemed to be no longer needed for any municipal purpose and unfit and unsafe for disposal in any other manner. And this is a piece of legislation that we do every couple months, and we had no miscellaneous discussion. And with that, Public Welfare and Safety will pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Griffin with Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on January 25th. We met virtual, all members present and all others noted. We had no requests for legislation. We had no miscellaneous discussion as well. A motion was made to adjourn. We're adjourned at 6:16. With that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Jaber, Environmental Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met February 1st, 2021 at 6:06. We were virtual. All members present, all others noted. We had no new requests. Miscellaneous discussion. We had Mr. Mayor, Judge, talk about the board meetings, health board meeting, and then we also had Mrs. Coburn, Mrs. Carl-Bevick, and Mr. Heidick just speaking about the overdose and if it's gone up or gone down. And we had Ms. Carol Fry said we're still waiting on the email for some stats and information. And we adjourned at 6:12, and with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Heidick, City Properties, Parks, and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met last Monday, January 25th, 6 p.m. virtual. Everybody was present. Guests noted. We had one request for legislation. It is a letter from Mayor William Judge requesting a resolution honoring Lisa McLean, our former Parks Director, who has recently retired. There were some very, very kind words spoken of her, and the mayor has emailed us the details of what the resolution will be, and I will be reading that in our committee meeting next week before we go to a vote. There was no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:07, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Last but not least is Mrs. Fry in Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met this evening at 7 o'clock on a GoToMeeting, which is a virtual meeting site. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted. The city, we had 2 pieces of legislation tonight and 2 letters requesting legislation, which we should receive for the next committee of the whole meeting. The first piece of legislation is a draft ordinance titled Authorized Payment to Summit County, and this is for the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Summit County in the amount of $64,000 for the 2021 radio access fees, which enables all city radios to be on the county-wide radio system, and declaring an emergency. This was referred to us from safety, and Mrs. DeBevick has given all the details about this particular program. The reason that we have gotten this is because it was from a PO dated after the obligation, and the amount is over $3,000. The second piece of legislation that we had tonight was a draft ordinance. It was also to authorize payment, but this is to authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Ports Petroleum in the amount of $9,610.31 for gasoline and diesel fuel and declaring an emergency. There were no questions or comments from other council members. This also is a PO that is dated after the obligation date and is over the amount of $3,000. During miscellaneous discussion, I indicated that I had gotten a letter from Mrs. Doherty, our safety director, regarding the civil service tests that we give, and they are going to change the method of giving the test. It is going to be done by an outside firm, and the cost will be $60. And by taking the test, the applicants will get to submit their applications or their test scores to any local local department, be it police or fire or whatever the test is for, to be considered for a job. Mrs. Doherty indicated that these tests will be proctored to eliminate any of them, and they will either be taken from your own computer or at different sites that are set up by the company that are administering the tests.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
I'm sorry to I apologize for interrupting, but I would like to say this is an option to the normal testing procedure and not in place of. So it would be in addition to and not necessarily replacing our usual testing method. I just wanted to make that clear. I'm sorry.
Okay, I didn't realize that myself, even after we talked and everything. I thought we were going to go this way because of COVID, and then
we will when it works to our advantage, yes. But it's an option to the regular testing method. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. And actually, the piece of legislation is simply for a rule change. It's an amendment to the rules that we have in place at the present time, and this is adding an option, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for correcting that. The other topic of discussion was our letter that was received by all of us by Mr. Flaker, our finance director, giving us the updated information about our new tax company, which is Rita. And there are still a few things that need to be ironed out, and Mr. Flaker will update us about those particular items. However, Rita has uploaded all of our information from the city of Barberton, and we are ready to go as far as filing our taxes. The issues that Mr. Flaker is checking on are different ways in which people can file their taxes if they have needed help in the past, and also if they would like for Rita to do the taxes for them. He is going to give us an update next week. He's going to do his taxes this weekend using the new website for the e-file, and he's going to let us know if it's easy, user-friendly. And with that, finance and personnel will pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor's report.
Thank you, President Nedges. A few updates here. Just a point of clarification on the rental registration dates. On my letter, I did ask for emergency wording. So just so you know, it wasn't removed or wasn't not put on there. It was on there, so not a big deal. Ohio Attorney General's office has a lot of important information on their website about COVID, but also if you feel someone has fraudulently filed an unemployment benefit in your name, there's a story in the Beacon over the weekend, and I know that this is an issue throughout the country. This is quickly becoming a huge issue that we've been keeping our eyes on, but there is information on the State of Ohio's Attorney General's office website, as is their information on COVID resources. The State of Ohio's biennial budget has been released. Budget hearings will be scheduled here in the near future, so we'll see what kind of funding is available for infrastructure and various projects that we can make use of. Council devices are completed, but we are in the kind of testing everything, making sure that's all up to par. And we want to provide training to all of council, probably in groups of 2, just so everyone knows how to log on, how to get their emails, be able to log on for council and make sure everything is working as it should be. So we'll be setting this up and getting in contact with all of council for that training pretty soon. In terms of COVID, there's a lot of changes. Every day, it's almost every hour there's some changes. So there's a lot of research going into at-home COVID tests. And Dr. Fauci was saying even today that this could come out next week. It could come out next month. So they're moving very quickly on this. Being able to test yourself at home has a lot of benefits. And so they're coming out with this here hopefully very soon. As testing, as we know, is at a premium, as is lab capacity and vaccines and everything else. So a lot of discussion on masks. So, should you wear more than one mask at the same time? And you've probably seen this in the news, but depending on the type of mask that you're wearing, you may need to wear more than one mask. That may be okay. If you remember when this all started, they said the importance of wearing a mask. And then they came back and said, a mask really doesn't work. But then they quickly reversed that and said, now masks do work. And so obviously that's been the push and some mandates. But now it seems that every type of material is being used as a mask. So some material obviously is going to protect you and protect those around you better than other masks. So depending on your material, kind of weak cloth, for example, you may behoove you to wear more than one, or to wear an N95 and then the cloth decorative commercial mask, if you will, over that. So a lot of questions over the weekend about that, and a lot of things in the news. So down in D.C., the president and GOP continue to discuss another stimulus package. Only a week and a half into office, continuing the talks on a stimulus package. What President Biden initially proposed obviously didn't go through, so both groups are discussing that, and so obviously more to come on that front in the coming days and weeks. A little bit more on COVID locally in the state of Ohio. We've experienced 50,000 new cases in a week, 8 out of the last 12 weeks. So this past week's the third week in a row with less than 50,000 cases. So that's a great sign that the numbers are going down. So we're keeping an eye on that. The average for Summit County, new cases in the past 7 days, the average is at 168.4 new cases. So this is way down from the previous over 300 cases and as an average last week. So great to see those numbers. Hospitalizations are going up, but the number of cases are going down. Deaths are going down, but we're still having them. Let's see here. And then, so if you're looking on the COVID side that I'm not reporting on, you want me to look into, like Councilman Heidick had mentioned earlier today during this meeting, I'm looking into his question. But if there's anything, please let me know and I will get you an answer. As I emailed council earlier this evening, later this late afternoon, had some technical difficulties last week with my computer and some of the programs. So I sent the budget to the finance director today. So it's going to take him, some time to turn it around, print it off, update it with my updates, make sure everything meets all the requirements, and get that out to council. So also, once you get the budget, take some time, look through it, but obviously we want to start discussing it as soon as possible. The first thing you'll notice, obviously, is the 2020 budget versus the 2020 actuals versus the 2021 budget. The numbers are going to be all over the place. So if you had $10,000, for example, as a training line item in 2020, you maybe spent 500 of it or nothing because of COVID. So most of the line items in the budgets are kind of odd like that. So there's going to be a lot of discrepancies. So what I'd like to do, and I've spoken to the department heads, is to, once you get your budget, have them come on and for example, fire, Chief Persley will come on and say, hey, before you guys ask any questions, let me run through some of the things that didn't happen last year or why the budget's a little odd and off because of COVID. Same with police and utilities and everyone else. So I think if they give you that input ahead of time, it may answer a lot of questions before you ask them, and it'll give them an opportunity to talk about some of the things, the nitty gritty that they're doing, and some of the changes and oddity in the budget from 20 to 21. So we'll get that budget out to you as soon as possible, and then start setting up those meetings. Council President Medges, that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any remarks from the body?
Mr. President?
Yes?
I'd like to thank Mrs. Price, our clerk court. She's doing an awesome job communicating and emailing and replying. And today I got the two of the resolutions, one for Keynes and one for Jacob Clemens. I want to say thank you again for her for communicating and getting it to me, and I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. President? Yes. Mr. President?
Yes.
I want to personally apologize to all of you for my computer misfunction that I experienced this evening. I don't know what went wrong. It was working perfectly fine, but when it comes up to my meeting, it decides to spit and spatter a little bit. But I apologize to council. I apologize to the guests that were at the meeting. And I want to thank Mrs. Coburn as a great co-chair to step up to the plate and help me with this. I'm a little embarrassed, and I did see one particular person kind of snicker. So that is just what happens. I've been on a computer probably longer than most of you on console. So I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to respond to Mrs. Angeloff and tell her there is nothing to apologize for. We are all on a learning curve here. So good. We cannot control these devices. Trust me. That's all.
You're right there, but I do apologize. Thank you.
That is a fact. We are at the mercy of these machines. Anyone else? Mm-hmm. Okay, I have something here. I want to talk about the police. Last week, there was an incident on 8th Street, I believe it was, 7th or 8th. I think it was 8th. A man barricaded himself into his house. There was a standoff there. They had to call in the SWAT team. And they went there. They were there for about 3 hours. And this is actually the third time since October that they have had to deal with this situation. And all 3 times, instead of arresting these people, they took them to where they needed to be to get them help. If you arrest them, they're just going to get lost in the shuffle, and they're not going to get the help that they need. But they did not get arrested. They just took them to the hospital, and made sure he got the help that he most desperately needs. Barberton police are in touch with our city. They know our residents, and they normally do 99.9% of the time, they do the right thing. And I just want to say kudos for them for how they handled these situations. So, anybody else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 8:10. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.